Hey there, sex explorers. You have landed on the Sex Reimagined Podcast. My name is Leah Piper. I'm your Tantra expert here and the co-host of the show.
Yeah, and I'm Dr. Willow Brown, your Taoist expert. And today we interviewed two really incredible souls. They are a divine union couple, Ariel Szabo and Rahi Chun. Ariel is a certified somatic sex educator, sexological body worker, and psychedelic therapist. She's known as the cosmic midwife of the soul, holding sacred spaces for transformational sexual embodiment and evolution. And Rahi Chun is also a certified sex educator and sexological bodywork who specializes in genital dearmoring, which you're going to hear all about. They love holding space individually and together for couples worldwide and with their online courses, Divine Union for Lovers. So check them out. You're going to love this podcast. So much to learn.
So please tune in, turn on, and fall in love with Rahi and Ariel.
Welcome to the Sex Reimagined Podcast, where sex is shame-free and pleasure-forward. Let's get into the show.
Okay, welcome to the Sex Reimagined Podcast. Rahi and Ariel, we're really happy to have you today.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, so great to be here.
So Rahi and Ariel have been working together and they are life partners. And they've been really guiding couples through major, phenomenal, transformational experiences since, I think, March of last year. But both have very deep and extensive backgrounds in sexual healing, sexual health. And so I'd love to start with, I asked Ariel a little bit earlier, how did you guys meet? I'd love to hear more details of that story and how you guys came together. The personal stuff. We want to hear the personal stuff.
We love a love story.
Well, sure. Well, the question is which lifetime do you want to start with? Because we've actually, let's
start with this lifetime.
Okay. Well, in this lifetime, our paths crossed about 4 or 5 years ago, as we're both, in the same field, as you mentioned. We're both certified as somatic sex educators, sexological body workers. And we were just intrigued by each other's work. I've always been drawn, from that point on, and Ariel's been kind of the big instigator for me as far as my evolution and understanding of the wisdom and power of plant medicines. And so, because she's been so immersed in that world, I've sought out her counsel as, I've been exploring that personally. And also from about 5 years ago, I cannot tell you how many clients have said my sexual trauma, the images, I've gotten clarity from an ayahuasca ceremony. And so I've just kind of leaned into finding out more and more. And recently, we've started combining Grandfather San Pedro with sexual healing. So I've started seeking out her counsel back then. She was seeking out, I have an expertise in genital dearmoring. I teach it worldwide. And so Ariel's taken my training in my my course. And then it was just, when it's obvious, it's obvious. And so, we've had many conversations about power dynamics and kind of our relational dynamics, because I sought out her counsel, she sought out mine. We really wanted it to be a clean container for what wanted to happen, and it's just really happened very organically and beautifully since.
Mm-hmm. Ariel, what would you add to that love story?
Well, I would add that it really started to take off at a really cool coming together of a bunch of colleagues, experimenting with the intersections of psychedelics, plant medicines, and sacred intimacy.
Yeah.
And that was, so that was a really that kind of put us on the magic carpet that we've been riding since then.
Now, were you guys both looking for your life partner, or were you kind of just happy as you were? Where were you at before it all sparked?
Well, I probably up to a year before we got together, with every plant medicine journey I'd done, the intention was to clear, past patterns, I mean, so many patterns of me being drawn to unavailable people, that kind of a thing, and really needing to let go of that, letting go of kind of cord cutting with maternal attachments, like all of that stuff. And then, there was this spaciousness and openness for, this union to come in. And I must say, like, I'm guessing your listeners have experienced something like this. It's like when we met, there was this almost an energetic communication happening between our bodies where like I would touch her shoulder and then intuitively my hand would want to go to her hip. And then she would say, oh, my hip wanted that touch there. It was this kind of like nonverbal communication that I had never experienced before.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was wild.
Wow.
Yeah. I really relate to that. I remember when my husband and I were just getting to know each other. He was actually a client. So I was one of those big, bad, taboo teachers who dated her client. After I fired him, by the way. But it was really amazing. Like we would be walking down the street and like our hips would just keep on magnetizing towards each other. It was like we couldn't walk side by side without our hips touching. And then like we're on this whale watching thing and like we couldn't help but just him to come behind me. First, like hands just on either side of the rails, right? Me in the center. And then the next thing you know, the pelvis and the hips, they connect. It's so yummy. And yeah, I love that gravitational pull between lovers wanting to magnetize each other. Really, really sexy stuff. Okay, so I have a question because we get this every once in a while. We're seeing more and more practitioners who have had experiences in the plant medicine world, who are also sex educators or in the sexual healing space, starting to blend the two together. And I have been a part of two different types of traditions. Some traditions that go, those two don't mix. You do plant medicine, you're opening up a can of worms. They keep really the genders very separated when they're doing medicine. So we've got that type of tradition. And then we have these more ancient mystery school traditions where sacraments, mind-altering substances, have been a part of the tradition for thousands of years. So I'm really curious about what you've been experiencing blending the two. What is at risk when you do that? What are the complications? What are the dangers? What are the taboos? And then also what the miracles have been that you've observed, either inside your own experiences or those with people that you're leading.
Yeah, well, I think, the danger is that there's just more risk involved, which also means that there's greater
reward,
formative potential.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's two different conversations when we're talking about personal use of combination and serving it to clients in a combination. I use it a lot in my personal use, and it's amazing and expansive and transformative. And I'm also mindful of the dosage that I'm using. And I think different things are available at different doses, whether you're under a lighter dose or a higher dose. And I think, when I think about combining it for clients, that can even look like so many different ways. When I facilitate ayahuasca retreats, not while people are in the medicine, but outside of that space, I might lead a somatic embodiment journey that is inviting them to get in touch with their sexual energy, touching their bodies, maybe being blindfolded and really just getting into their senses and their pleasure. And the transformations that I see with that, the feedback that I get from that is like, this is so helpful. It's opening me more to the medicine. It's also helping me integrate what the medicine is bringing to me.
So let me just make sure, I want to clarify this for the audience, is that when it comes to ayahuasca, for instance, you're not guiding them towards, connecting to their sexual energy during their high of being on the medicine. You're using it as an integration tool to help them integrate their experience from ayahuasca, and also in preparation for their next ayahuasca journey that I'm imagining they're drinking more than one time on a retreat like this.
Correct.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have found that to be so powerful as well, simply because ayahuasca herself is such a force of divine feminine energy. And so, when we're getting in touch with Shakti, and so leading and guiding people into these somatic experiences in between journeys on a, weekend retreat like that, um, it really awakens what the medicine has to offer in such a different and unique way. It's really profound. I'm curious if you guys ever do. I know you work with Wachuma, which is San Pedro, as well, and I'm curious if you are ever blending the two at the same time. If you're ever doing, let's say, pelvic floor work, dearmoring while somebody is on the medicine at that moment, or if it's always, we're going to do medicine today and we're going to do pelvic floor work tomorrow.
And I just want to preface it. I want to make sure that we're not jumping too far ahead using language that listeners have no idea what we're talking about. For instance, there may be people listening that have never heard of ayahuasca before. There may be people listening that don't know what San Pedro is and what it does. There are lots of people who probably don't know what we're talking about when you're talking about dearmoring genitals or pelvic floor release work. So we don't have to go into huge, long descriptions, but as we're sort of putting language out there that a beginner has never heard of before, if you could just give us a snippet explanation of what you're referring to so that we're not losing anybody in the conversation.
Yeah. So, Rahi and I have been at a retreat together that we held where we've combined, but this is couples working with one another. We're not working on them.
Okay.
And it's a low dose and it's very profound and powerful. And, that particular medicine, which is from a cactus, the active compound in it is mescaline. It's not a medicine that generally gives people lots of visions. And especially at a lower dose, it really, Wachuma literally, which is another name for the same medicine, San Pedro, it literally means without a head. So it brings you into your body and helps you connect with your heart and your feelings and your sensations more.
Does it make it more erotic when you are more connected to your sensations, or is it maybe processing things that are not erotic?
Stuck. Yeah. Like old
I
traumas.
think it can be both. It's kind of whatever the person needs is what's going to happen.
Sure.
Mhm.
And also guided by their intentions.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, so like, we have had experiences together of combining them. I mean, I can speak from my practice that the majority of the work that I do is actually keeping the two separate. And that if we are going to combine them, there has to be a lot of trust. It's definitely not going to happen the first time that we're meeting or the second time, probably.
Right.
But and the reason that this is because these medicines blur boundaries and it make consent even more nuanced and layered than it already is. And that's why you need to be so careful with how you approach this, the way it's introduced, what dosage are you using if you are combining the two things? Does the person even have experience with the medicine before doing this? Should you really be combining two potent medicines if the person doesn't already have experience with each potent medicine on their own?
And when you say two potent medicines, you're speaking to sexual healing and the San Pedro or Wachuma. And so Rahi, were you going to say something?
Yeah,
I just really wanted to highlight the experience of this couples retreat. It was 2 days. The first day was really spent on creating a safe container. So, Leah, what you would ask, what you had touched on earlier, what that looks like is really understanding, something that we call the 8 pillars of intimacy. They're really principles and values of slowing down, of pausing, of noticing what's really happening within your body, of attuning to what it is that your body's feeling moment by moment. So the first day was really establishing that safety and also
I love that.
Yeah, and also encouraging, as Ariel said, these were 3 couples, so they knew each other. I mean, it was a range of couples. To be honest with you, one couple was on their 3rd date, They came to this
Oh,
3-day,
love that.
yeah. And then
I
They're
love
like,
seeing
let's
that.
go. Who cares about couples therapy?
We're-
Let's do
Yes.
this. We're going
yes.
all in.
We're
Deep
building a
end.
foundation.
yes, by diving into the deep end, which is exactly what they
That's
did.
fantastic.
But going to your point earlier as to, whether the San Pedro made them more erotic, it was really interesting because after 2 days of facilitating one-way touch, which included genital mapping, right? So really educating the erogenous anatomy via a felt sense, we found that the medicine just met each couple where they were ready to go deeper. So there was one couple that had been together for 13 years, and the healing ceremony that we witnessed them go through was deeply emotional and healing, right? Where the receiver asked the giver to apologize to different areas of their vulva. Whereas
Powerful.
the couple that were on their third date, I mean, she said she had the most ecstatic orgasm of her life. And that's what they were ready for. So we found that the grandfather San Pedro really met like each couple, each body after 2 days of one-way touch, like where it was ready to go next in a much deeper way.
I love
Mm.
that. There's a couple things that I would love to go deeper on with what you said. I would want to hear more about what container is. We hear that word a lot, container or holding space in a lot of the therapeutic circles. But how does someone create a container? And then what are these 8 pillars of intimacy?
And also, I'm curious, in this particular container that you set for these 3 couples, were they on their own in their own separate room, or was everyone in a room together when they were practicing on the San Pedro?
Yeah. So a couple of things: containers, the 8 pillars, and how we facilitated the couples. What do you want to take, Ariel?
I'll do the 8 pillars, but you start with something else.
Okay. So
Yeah.
as far as the containers, so, in plant medicine work, there's a lot of talk about set and setting. And I feel like it's really applicable to sacred sexuality containers as well. We started the container with a Zoom for everyone to get to know each other and to share the intentions. But the container is really defined by the agreements that everyone shares. So, there are certain agreements that I think are kind of, make sense and are applicable to most containers: confidentiality, boundaries, self-care, self-responsibility. But we're really big on inviting emotions into the container because we know that, what's going to cause a breakthrough within a couple or within a body is to kind of metabolize whatever emotion that's been creating an obstacle in the energy flow, in the body's response. And so we're really big on inviting all kinds of emotions. And with that kind of tone set, the container, it really invites and encourages the emotions. And we found that it was actually the men, they were 3 heterosexual couples who were deeply vulnerable from the get-go. And that really sets a tone. And then
Yeah.
we're encouraging.
Love that.
Yeah. It was really inspiring. And then we kept, the agreements are like on a whiteboard, and we continue to refer back to it. So it's almost like the values and principles of, being emotionally open, being vulnerable, like taking self-responsibility, are returned to and reminded of again and again throughout the weekend.
I love that. So those are the agreements that everyone kind of comes up with together. So you kind of are like writing these agreements down as people are throwing them out in the beginning to set the tone for the entire weekend.
The tone. Yes. The tone is so important.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I like to think of, too, the container as really what's predictable, because there's so much that's unpredictable when we're
That's a
going
good
deeply
distinction.
into our bodies and our emotions. So the container is what's going to anchor people so that they do have something to like hold on to, know is reliable, so that they can go into what's unknown. And for a lot of people, that can feel pretty scary.
Mm. Is there any other like building of the container that you guys do as far as like calling in the elements, calling in spiritual support, calling in guides, calling in guardians, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, I would say there's a good amount that we do that is unseen by the participants, and then there's some of it that we do that is seen and with the participants.
Gotcha. Yeah. So you kind of, even before they even show up, have already set the field, quote unquote, so to speak. Yeah. Love that.
Yeah, I love your languaging in that, Willow. So Ariel and I have organically kind of cultivated our own rituals, calling in our guides, their guides, and our own kind of energy circulation to make sure that we're holding the container clean. And then, from there, we invite the container within the organism of the group.
I love that. I'm curious, before we move on from container setting and setting tone and space and all of that and holding space, like what have your participants come to you afterwards with in reference to that? Have they come to you and said things like, God, you guys hold amazing space, or wow, the container you set was so powerful, or that we all set together, thank you for helping us co-create it, or anything along those lines? Did they notice that?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, we did a cacao ceremony recently, and all of the feedback, like the common thread, was about the container and how the container allowed them for their inner children to come out and be seen by their partners, for example, or that they were surprised that, things that they didn't think would, things that surprised them in regards to their vulnerability. And they referred back to the safety of the container.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think a lot of what also makes a container feel that way for participants has to do with the nervous system of the facilitators. Because
good point.
If you're really grounded, people might not even be conscious that that's what they're responded to. But then they can kind of co-regulate with the most grounded nervous systems in the room.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful.
Great. Let's jump to unless you had a follow up. Yeah.
No.
The 8 pillars of intimacy.
The 8 pillars.
Ariel, take it away.
I love the 8 pillars of intimacy. I feel like these are really the skills that all of us can build to have a deeply intimate and satisfying relationship with ourselves, and then of course other beings and the world around us in general. So the pillars are first slowing down so that you don't miss cues from your own body, other people's bodies. Then pausing. So taking a sacred pause so that you can then notice what is even happening for you, your sensations, your emotions, and then attune to what's happening. And then therefore what you might need, want, desire. And then from there, accept it. Accept what is true for you moment to moment. This is one a lot of people struggle with because we might not like what's happening. We might want to push it away and suppress it. And then trust it. Trust what your body is telling you, your physical body, your emotional body, and then value it. Value it enough to take up space with it, and then communicate whatever you need to with the person you're in relationship with, or make any adjustments necessary.
Mm-hmm. Do you guys have a what is an acronym for your 8 pillars so people can remember them easily?
We are in the midst of kind of creating a visual.
Okay, good.
I like that.
I love it. So we've got slowing down, pausing, noticing, attuning, accepting. I forget what's after that.
Trusting, valuing, communicating.
They
Did we get
go
all
in
8?
such a nice order.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
all 8.
Okay.
That's all
Okay.
it.
Yeah.
Great. That's beautiful.
Leah and I always say 3 pillars to intimacy, which is trust, presence, and vulnerability. So it's sort of a more simplified version of what you guys have created.
Beautiful.
But I love that. I love those 8 pillars. Those are fantastic. And they build on each other.
Yes.
I especially love the slowing down and the pausing.
Mm-hmm.
It's really be even more in the moment. And you can't do that if you're going so fast. To really be in the moment, you've got to be right there. And that is not a fast processing experience. That's really here.
I love that you guys are bringing the pause in, because I feel like that is such one of the most
underrated.
valuable and underrated, like phenomenal practices that we could have in all of life. And I really learned it studying pre and perinatal psychology, and it was I think they have seven things that like help you come closer together inside of intimacy and relationship. And the pause was just highlighted over and over again. So ever since I did that training, however many years ago, I've really been introducing it to people, and nobody thinks about it. Nobody knows about the pause. And so everyone who's listening, like, it's okay to pause. And that pause could be 3 minutes. It could be 3 days. It could be 3 years. Like, the pause is as long as you need the pause to be. So that noticing piece that you have in there, as well as like really, noticing and attuning, like, am I done with my pause yet? Am I really truly done with my pause? Or am I feeling pressure from outside to be done with my pause earlier? So that pause can be such a sacred practice in all of life, and especially in sexuality, because there's, in sort of traditional sexuality, there's such a frenzy and a fastness to it. Like, let's hurry up and get to the finish line. And there's so much missed felt sense because of that a lack of being able to take sexual sovereignty and really pause.
I think too, there's something really interesting that we are in a habit of, which is going so fast we're not feeling or attuning to the sensations or to our arising desires or to what we need that may be different from what we're getting. And so to be able not to rush through that or to skip through it, I've watched over the years, I think especially with vulva owners in particular, abandon their needs in sexual experiences. They're like rushing through it, almost to just sometimes just to please the other person.
And sometimes just to get it over.
Just get it over, but like not really. It's just to get it over is one thing, but I think half of that is due to the fact that we're not investigating what our real desires are, what the potential of what it is that we want that's different. And so we end up landing in this place of just knowing what we don't want instead of discovering what we do want. And so I love this idea of the combination of slowing down, attuning, looking, accepting. And that accepting can be very crunchy. I think what you sort of were referring to, Ariel, it's like, A, just being with not getting maybe what we need, or B, not knowing what we and having to like be in that place of discovery. And sometimes that takes time to find out. What would you add to that, Rahi?
Well, I just love how intentionally sequenced these pillars are, because they do build on each other. And it starts with slowing down, and to both of your points, to pausing. Both Ariel and I are very, very aware and like love to point out to couples how as soon as, one person's body feels arousal, it's almost like they're on a unstoppable train track to orgasm, and they're missing out on like the expansive terrains along the way. And what I love about pausing is, like it takes into account how moment by moment things are changing. Sensations, feelings, desires can shift moment to moment, and the slowing down and pausing really takes, really every step of the 8 pillars takes all of that into consideration. And one of our participants pointed out that the first 7 are actually internal experiences until the communicating comes at the 8th. And that's how much like self-inquiry and examination we feel like is necessary for people to really engage and be satiated in the desires that their body wants.
And now, have you noticed that in this recent event that you did with the plant medicine, was there a particular pillar like the pause or acceptance that medicine really helped people, settle into more inside of themselves?
I don't know if it's really coming for me as a pillar. It feels more just like the truth, the deepest emotions just came to the surface.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of like reflects all of the pillars, really,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
To again touch with what your true authentic emotions are. I think like unconsciously we're either rushing through those 8 pillars or we're overriding those 8 pillars, right? But to really slow down the process invites that kind of emotional excavation and honoring.
Lovely. So now let's find out how you're facilitating these couples in the classroom. Back to Dr. Willow's original question a while back.
Right. Well, the space, which was held in my space here, allowed for each couple to have the privacy of their own bedroom, right? Whereas we met and demoed each one-way touch practice in the living area. So the big circle, the opening circle, the closing circle, the group shares, we had a great space in the living area, but then each couple had the privacy of their own room to really go as deep or as wide or however their exploration carried them.
Mm. Oh, that's nice. So there was like a cohesive group experience, and there was option to just go private and do your own thing.
Exactly.
Love that.
Well, one of the things I know was on my list to dig in deep with was talking about extended states of arousal and how you guide people into that. What does that mean to the two of you? What does that mean to your students?
Yeah, so extended states of arousal are really like luxuriating in low states of arousal, medium states of arousal, high states of arousal without going over the edge. So if we think about pleasure on a dial from 0 to 10, like 0 being like not really aroused, 10 being there's a release in orgasm, then like what is it like to stay for a long period of time in 3? Or what about 5? Or what about 7 or 8? And what I find, particularly in the low and medium states, is that a lot of unmetabolized emotional material will come to the surface. It's almost like the arousal, right? It like feels good, so it opens the system. And then things just start coming up. And if you're in a container that you've created with the intention of like allowing these things to arise and tend to them, it can be like, whoa, unbelievable metabolizing and healing can take place of what arises. I find when like luxuriating, spending time in the higher states of arousal, like maybe like 6, 7, 8, 9, it can become this like one with the universe, blissful in a cloud, like consciousness expanding. All boundaries have dissolved between me, my partner, and the world around me.
Yeah, very transcendent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I love that space. That's the best.
Yeah.
Well, yes, but I just want to add too, I think sometimes like we're always in a rush. I think sometimes, especially like when you look at like tantric sort of philosophies and stuff, I think a lot of people get carried away in this desire to want to reach like 8 and 9, like that's the ultimate. And it's true that those transcendent states have a level of profundity that is very different from what we have access to in the lower numbers. But I think what's really beautiful about the lower numbers is that they're less investigated. And because they're not so colorful all the time, like they're not sweeping you away, you can have experiences of self-realization. There can be a certain amount of self-acceptance and like an acknowledgement that there's bliss here too, that we don't always have to be in the rush to get up to the higher numbers. It's like, but who am I at a 2.2? What does the sensation in the back of my throat compared to the tip of my clitoris feel like at a 3.1? And can I be as in love? Can I bring sort of a sense of euphoria and bliss to these more common, less exalted places? I think there's a really interesting challenge there to invite the seeker to explore. that sometimes for people, it almost seems like it's intolerable. You know what I mean? Because we get so goal oriented.
Because you want to get higher.
Yeah, because we're valuing higher is better.
Right.
And I think to allow people to come into these places that are less extraordinary helps us see life differently. It then, when we extend outward, out of the sexual realm into other sectors of our life, not all of life has to be one bliss goal. We can actually see like the beauty in boredom. We can see the beauty in the mundane. We can look for the beauty where most of the time we're not consciously choosing to do so. It's my little tangent.
That's a great tangent, Leah. I think one of the things that's really powerful about both sacred sexual healing work and plant medicine individually and also together is it almost like offers us more permission to jump between those things. Like it's okay to go up and hang out in the 8-9 for a while and then come back down to the 3-4 and just hang out there for a while, and so it doesn't always have to be like you're climbing a ladder and you can't go back to lower stages. And it's almost like, in my experience, you have more appreciation for those lower stages, of arousal.
Absolutely.
When you're just coming off of a big rush from an 8 or something like that. So
essentially what we're doing with couples is deconstructing the default conditioned physiological and psychological response where arousal has to lead to orgasm or arousal has to go to some kind of result. We want to expand and just open the playing field so that you can go from a 3 to an 8 to a 5 to a 9. And those lower states, as you both, beautifully articulated, there's so many untapped terrains to explore there. But at the same time, once we start exploring the 8 zone, we realize, there is an 8.125, there is an 8.126, like the 8 to 9 starts to elongate. And then what we love doing is after a lovemaking session of an 8.9, meditate and just be still and go about our day with that vibrant, with that frequency, right? So that we're going about and, we go to Whole Foods and all of a sudden everyone's trying to help us for some reason. You know what I mean?
And everyone's smiling at you.
Yeah, everyone is giving us attention. And then we come back and then when we start making love again, it picks up from that, 8 zone and we continue to elongate what is actually possible and what kind of states of consciousness, our vessels have the capacity for.
Oh, I love that. I love this word deconstruct. It's allowing us to actually, this is where I think pleasure really becomes a path of self-realization.
Yes.
Where we can take a look at arousal and allow and stretch it out like taffy. I always tell people, look, we're so obsessed with the destination that we're forgetting that the best part of the journey is going on the ride. And you don't want the ride to just be one direction. We're just going up, 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 up. The ride has got to have some hills. We got to like do a turnabout. We need to have some roundabouts turned into those hills and those valleys and curving around the mountains. And that's really where I think people become the best lovers, is when they know how to take someone's system on a ride.
Yes.
Because that's what really this whole thing around putting love into our bodies and using arousal as our playground, it's about being on a ride. And the thing that I think is so dangerous in this time that we're living in is our need and our chase of dopamine dumps. It's like, give me that next hit, grab my attention with the way that we're looking at screens and the way that we're so hungry for information. We're actually not allowing our body to go down. It's like we can't just have peaks. We actually need to go down healthfully. Otherwise, we're robbing ourselves of dopamine and we're going to experience things like depression and anxiety and these other negative states of emotions by now allowing ourselves to take and dial down our system, to actually allow ourselves to go through hard things, to feel everything that comes with an obstacle, not be in a chase to just get over the obstacle, but take our time there. Like, allow everything that life has to give us and not only be chasing these dopamine dumps, which I think when we're chasing orgasm, and this is where things like sex addiction and love addiction and other things become problematic because we're chasing the hit. And I love what you're saying, Rahi, because when we can slow things down and we allow ourselves to actually stop before we have the climax, we stay at a moment of high arousal, and then we allow this meditative experience to happen, and then we go do the mundane, we go to the grocery store. I think what happened, which is just such a beautiful phenomenon, is we're learning how to take that turn on and make it a life experience so that we're turned on. We're taking that turn on into the world. And you're right, people are noticing because we're lit up from the inside, and that is magnetic. And when we are living a turned on life, there's an osmosis, there's mirror neurons that we can then use to turn on other people. So we're giving them permission to also be turned on. And I just think that's kind of really beatific in its radiance.
It's an arousal ripple.
So ripple.
It's an arousal ripple. And we're shifting from orgasm to orgasmic states of being.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're taking that peace we feel in that place, that feeling of contentment, that feeling of presence. And we're letting that be present in the world, which is something I think we're really in need of, is this experience of others in a peaceful place. You know, like, because don't we feel better when we're sitting next to someone who's experiencing contentment and peace? Doesn't that also give us permission to like settle down into our own nervous system that may be feeling a bit whelmed or under-resourced? So I feel like from like a universal level, this has a ripple effect in the world, not just for our own being or maybe the effect it has on our lover, but really how it can affect a stranger.
Totally.
100%.
Yeah. And it does require, like why are we so fixated on orgasm? Or like, there's generations now, their sex ed is porn, and the glorified shot is what they call, quote unquote, the money shot. And that's when the party ends. I never understood, why is that the money shot? That means the party's over.
That's such a good point.
But it really, it invites us to examine like what's our sexual ego and identity invested in? Is it the orgasm, or is it, as you're speaking to, really this deep, profound peace that can spread throughout, your family, your friends, your community, kind of throughout the world?
Yeah. So I'm curious, but I don't, Will, I want to make sure that you don't have something biting at the bit before I ask another question.
Go for it.
Okay. So I'm curious about when people are contacting you, what are they, because most of the time people are contacting us to work with us because they're facing a problem in their life. There's something that they feel called to work on. So what are some of the problems? What's the pain? What's the story of people's pain that they're coming to you asking for support and help with?
Well, I think it there's different contexts, but it's always comes back to wanting deeper connection.
Yeah, that's at the
Wanting
root of it.
satisfying connection,
Yeah.
satisfying intimacy.
Yeah, I could see that is like what it strips down to. But I would like to know a little bit more about the context, because I think for the listener, it will help them feel, yeah, that's what I'm struggling with. Can you say a little about the context? Because I feel like that's what people connect to first. And then it's the realization that what they're hungry for is connection.
Yeah, so I can give a couple examples that are coming to mind for me now, or like patterns of enduring between couples, like doing things that they're not actually really wanting, but not knowing how to change it or express it to their partner. There can be like people who are struggling, are inorgasmic, or people who have erectile dysfunction. I don't know, Rahi, what else is coming to your mind?
Well, I do feel like the underlying is a desire for connection, and another underlying is not knowing how to get there. And, so much of what we do is facilitate kind of a re-education for couples to learn about each other's bodies through one-way touch. So, we're both somatic sex educators, and kind of a pillar of our education is around one person doing nothing but being present to the sensations of receiving touch. And in that, we can recondition past patterns, and people learn so much about each other's bodies that they, like, people could have been married decades and they never realize, oh, my wife likes the light, feathery touch. I just didn't have that in my arsenal,
Totally.
So
Yeah.
one-way touch is really big. And then, another pillar of our work is what we call genital mapping. I mentioned this earlier, what we did facilitated for the couples. It's really understanding the erogenous anatomy and how much time it takes and how much time you can enjoy spending, right? Like warming up, getting the blood flowing, exploring with combined different erogenous parts of the, vulva and vagina, or the, perineum and the base of the shaft, or the frenulum. I mean, there's just so many different combinations that people don't know about, and it's their body, it's their body. So I would say, in addition to the enduring, which is a huge piece, is, it's really like learning sex education for the first time, but, like a felt sense sex education. So couples are really learning like how much downregulation of their partner's nervous system is required for them to even feel stuff, and that requires, understanding each other's nervous system histories and, childhood ruptures, and just creating that safe container so that the body can actually feel safe to respond.
I love that.
Love that.
Rahi, can you talk a little bit about the dearmoring, what that is, and the practice of it, and then at what point you might teach couples how to do that on each other? I'm imagining after they've learned one-way touch and they've learned genital mapping and some of these more foundational pieces that you're speaking to.
Sure. So to define it simply, genital armor is the unconscious guarding patterns that the tissue and fascia of the body resort to when they're feeling a threat or a perceived threat, right? And that could be, the extreme example would be a sexual violation, but that could also be religious shaming, cultural shaming, like getting whistled and catcalls for parts of your body that you feel shy about. So that can start to create guarding in different parts of the body. And what that is often is unmetabolized emotions from past experiences. So to your point, Willow, the keys before dearmoring is approached really requires understanding what the nervous system needs to feel safe, how to empower the body to advocate for what it wants, so it's only receiving the kinds and quality of touch it desires, and then the mapping process. With those in place, you can start to have a safe container. Again, the container is so important to start to release these unconscious guarding patterns that may have been in place since childhood. And what that does is it restricts your capacity to really feel sensations. Right. So it shows up as numbness or pain or discomfort or desensitization.
And so is the dearmoring process and practice generally an uncomfortable one? Or can there be pleasure woven in with it as well?
Right. So, I'm a big advocate of any dearmoring session should be at least 50% pleasurable and fun. Otherwise, because that resources the body to want to inhabit itself more and gives the incentive for the body to continue dearmoring if there's pleasure on the other side. So that's a really, really big piece of it.
Right. And
Cool.
and isn't it also true that like there's genital dearmoring, like maybe where we go into the pelvic floor and we find these tender points and we unravel and unwind them. But then there's also like in the hips, in the groin, in the sacrum, in the center of the glutes and the fold of the glutes, like all of the whole kind of hip girdle can have armor in it.
Absolutely. So, one of my teachers shares that most pelvic armor happens before the age of 7 and has nothing to do with sexuality.
Oh, that's very interesting. Tell us more about that.
Well, it's like the way the chakra systems are developed. It's the root chakra that develops first. And, when you're 3 and your parent says, oh, don't touch that, like what contracts is your pelvis. And so all of those, unmetabolized emotions that, oh, my sister got more attention than me, or, I couldn't play when I wanted to, like all of those things could be stored there, much less like, potty training, like diaper changing.
Potty training is got to be totally a big element to that of like transitioning from being able to just let go, and then all of a sudden you have to now control this and get to the bathroom, like how much we grip, and then how much we grip for the rest of our life.
Right.
I mean, how many of us have a tight ass, right? Uptight as a home.
Right.
It's your first chakra.
Right. It's the first chakra. And, let's not forget, we are sponges as children, and we're absorbing all of our parents' unmetabolized, resolved, sexual issues about their own genitalia, which we feel when they touch us.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Right.
But, Ariel's gone through this incredible transformation of dearmoring of her own body. And I'd love to hear like what that process was like. I mean, as far as like, because like my body, of course, everyone has armor, but my body itself hasn't taken the journey of like being fully armored, being armored to dearmoring. And so I'm always like in awe of bodies that go through that journey.
Mm.
Yeah, Ariel, is that something you've experienced? Did you want to share a bit about it?
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So I would say I started to become really aware of armor in my body in a new way when I actually started training to become a sex bod. I mean, I was aware of like years of sexual trauma that I was moving through, but I wasn't aware of it to the degree until I started becoming more educated on how armor can even look and show up. And then I started really like working with my own body, just with like gentle touch and really practicing the pillars, and doing a lot of plant medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And those two things, I mean, it was over a period of years, really just opened me up. And as I was starting to become more attuned with my own body and like really be gentle and loving with it, the types of relationships that I was seeking out and involving myself in also became more loving and nurturing, which also helped my body open more because I was creating a safe container for myself and with the people around me.
Quite an unfolding, like an organic unfolding and process and journey. And what would you say has like where you're at now with the journey, like the outcome, quote unquote, like where?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty amazing, like I'm going from living mostly in disassociation to being able to spend hours upon hours in extended states of arousal, being completely open to my beloved. So it's kind of like a complete other side.
It's like night and day.
Yeah.
I love that.
That's awesome.
So beautiful. So powerful.
Well, thank you so much for the two of you being here today. I know people can find you at divineunionlovers.com. That's the website that you have together.
Yeah, it's actually divineunionforlovers.com.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. divineunionforlovers.com. And Ariel will soon be residing with Rahi in Santa Monica. So really excited for your future events. And you work, you do workshops and you also work one-on-one with folks?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And are you specializing just in couples or are you working with individuals as well?
Yeah, we do work with couples and then I work with individuals. Rahi works with individuals. Yeah.
we work with individuals, couples. We have a range of different couples retreats and workshops. And then we have our online course, divineunionforlovers.com. And then,
great.
yeah. And then, we'll start, the retreats will likely be in Costa Rica and here in Santa Monica.
Oh,
Wonderful.
fabulous. So we
So
all like to go on
exciting.
vacation. And then I
Yes.
believe you both have your own websites. Ariel, you can be found at sacredmoonflower.com.
Mhm.
Okay. And Rahi, yours is somaticsexualwholeness.com.
Correct.
And Rahi has
Yay.
a wonderful podcast that you all can check out as well. He just hosted Leah and I on his podcast recently, and he is a wealth of information. So lots to learn and digest and, reach out to. If you've been curious about plant medicine, these two amazing human beings are very safe people to reach out to connect with. If you're curious, even if you're not ready, but you're just a little curious, I would recommend both of them highly.
Yeah. And the name of Rahi's podcast is Organic Sexuality.
Love that.
Thank you.
Cool. We'll have links in the show notes for everyone so that you can reach out and work with these two beautiful souls. Next up is The Dish with Dr. Willow and myself, so please stay tuned.
Now, our favorite part, the dish.
What fine educators they are. I really loved their way that they spoke about, things that are certainly in our repertoire as educators, but I'm really loving how they have developed it. I love their 8 pillars of
The
intimacy.
8 pillars are great.
Right?
Yeah.
Great.
So good. We're
I'm
going to have to use those.
Absolutely, we'll be implementing some of that into our own pillars somehow, some way. So stay tuned, you guys. We're probably going to have a really funny extra iteration of our own. And the one-way touch, of course, is familiar. Our languaging is a little bit different as we kind of usually use language like
Giver
the
and
giver and
receiver.
receiver, but it's really true when you break it down. It's just one-way touch and how much you can discover. In fact, it's the only way to discover so much subtle sensation that gets bypassed and overlooked when two people are trying to do the same thing at the same time. How could you ever learn the things that really open you the biggest and really give yourself the gift of learning how to receive at a profound and new level?
Yeah. I love, the work that they're doing with plant medicine and how they're incorporating that with sexual healing and teaching people one-way touch, and couples who've been together for long periods of time who are discovering new things about themselves, about their own bodies, about their partner's bodies, learning how to pause, learning how to attune. So, so valuable and so important. And, the integration of their work with San Pedro and with Ariel using some ayahuasca and some of her other work as well. I think, whenever I've been in the field of integrating them as well, I've just seen just how powerful and how opening it can be to clearing old blocks, clearing things that are holding you back from intimacy, the fear, the shame, the doubt, the guilt, all that shit gets to just get uprooted in a single day sometimes. And it's just so powerful to see what transpires then the next day and how much more openness and connectedness within there is, so that the connection with partner can be so much stronger. So really, really would highly recommend checking out their offerings for couples and as well as the work that they do with individuals.
I mean, on the same note, with or without medicine, I think with medicine that gets really amplified on a deep-rooted, magical way. What I love is how much they're helping people discover within those pillars, like the 7 pillars before communication, really working on what does intimacy feel like in your own body. Like learning how to be good at intimacy, that has to happen first on the inside before you can bring it to another person or experience. And so I was really touched and inspired by how much they're really helping people map that out in their system before engaging in the way with which we share it with others. I think that's something unique, and I would look forward to expanding on that in my own work.
Absolutely. And one final thing that I want to highlight that I just loved that Rahi really shared was the dearmoring process and what that actually means, because that's a big word in our field these days, dearmoring. And so he really unpacked that nicely and described it and shared the value of it and what's possible. And I love that he, highlighted too that half of the session should be pleasure and half should be
Yeah. Oh, I
the
love that
deeper
too.
clearing, because I've had dearming work and I'm like, oh, that was so painful and not pleasant, and then I've had pleasure dearmoring as well, and it's a completely different experience for your soma. It's so you integrate the release of all the old stuff so much better when there's pleasure involved as well.
Well, I think also like dearmoring is a word that means that has different techniques for different practitioners. So you can't just say there's one kind of dearmoring. There are schools out there that do dearmoring. They're
In so
all
many ways.
different. So there's no like one way to describe dearmoring per practitioner. There's not a ton of schools that are doing it. I know of maybe 2 or 3 systems. There might be more out there. So it's very important that if you're feeling called to explore dearmoring, that you interview a number of people and find out what that means to them and their
For them.
process.
Yeah.
So that you are choosing the one that most resonates with you. Do not get confused that when someone says dearmoring that it's the same thing for every practitioner.
Yeah. And then also sometimes people are doing dearmoring, but they don't call it that. So,
Right.
the pelvic floor work that I do it's the same idea. It's the same thing. It's the same concept.
All right,
Yeah.
everyone, have a beautiful, beautiful day. We'll see you on the flip side. And by the way, do not be, what's the word?
Timid?
Oh, please do not be stingy on your likes and your comments. Like, we really need those in order to help the show grow. It just takes such a short amount of time to really help us expand our viewership. So please be generous with those comments. We so appreciate them, and we read every single one. With that, have a gorgeous afternoon, morning, or evening. Love, love, love.
Thanks for tuning in. This episode was hosted by Tantric Sex Master Coach and Positive Psychology Facilitator Leah Piper, as well as by Chinese and Functional Medicine Doctor and Taoist Sexology Teacher Dr. Willow Brown. Don't forget, your comments, likes, subscribes, and suggestions matter. Let's realize this new world together.